Paul Heyman is 1,000% right about CM Punk. And in this video, I'm going to tell you exactly what he's right about and why it's such a big freaking deal. On to WWE has been a little lackluster, though. I mean, let's be real here. I understand that CM Punk, he had a reputation to build up. I understand that CM Punk, well, a little bit of a rocky road in AEW. I understand the fact that CM Punk had his legs cut from under it because of injury, right? When CM Punk returned at Survivor Series in November, everyone's like, oh, here we go, right? Hell is frozen over him, and they made a t-shirt about that. But ever since then, CM Punk's not been edgy. Now, granted, he's been a babyface, and he's on his best behavior because he knows he can't go back to AEW, and he knows that, well, WWE return took 10 years in the making, and he probably shouldn't screw this up, considering that he wants to wrestle. He has been bitten by the wrestling bug yet again. Now, I will say this, his feud with Drew McIntyre has shadowed that, right? Because that weird time period between the time that he returned and to the moment he got into the feud with Drew McIntyre, that was a rough spot. Since WrestleMania 40, really since that segment on Monday Night Raw, where it was him and Drew McIntyre and Seth Rollins, they created gold in that promo segment. That was unbelievable. And his program with Drew McIntyre going for months upon months has been fantastic. And we'll talk about that more in a minute. But I want to talk about Paul Heyman, because Paul Heyman, he has obviously been off of WWE television as of late. He got laid out by the Bloodline and Solo Sikoa. But while doing a recent interview with Sam Roberts, he discussed Punk's WWE return at Survivor Series. Now, keep in mind that Punk and Heyman, they go back years. How do they go back years? Well, when Paul was overlooking OVW, and when Paul was overlooking the early stages of ECW, he was a big component of Punk. In fact, he's told the story. I'm sure you've heard it before. I'll quickly tell it. Paul was informed to let Punk know that he would be fired, and Paul Heyman believed in Punk when no one else did and refused to fire him. And for that, he's forever loyal. Now, in this interview with Sam Roberts, he said this in regards to Punk's WWE return. He said, it's destiny, really. CM Punk is back where he belongs, and that's on top in WWE. It's the old song that you had to go through hell to get to heaven, and CM Punk, the struggle is real, and he is a rebel. To this day, he's a rebel, but the rebel would never reach the top. The rebel will never get his due on his own merit if he doesn't go through pure, blatant, bloody hell, and that hell could not have been in WWE. He had to go through hell elsewhere as well, and everybody had to see it and hear about it, and I know about it, and sit there and go, my God, will somebody please one time give this talented man the platform that he deserves? And he's 1,000% right. I understand that CM Punk and AEW, from a visual standpoint, maybe fit better. But if you look at the psychology behind him in AEW, it was completely night and day. He went from top of the world in WWE. He took 10 years off, and he returned to AEW in the fall, September-ish, August-ish of 2021 on Rampage. And he kept that promo about how he has returned to pro wrestling. He left pro wrestling when he left Ring of Honor for ROH a decade ago. And he was right. Under Vince McMahon, WWE is not pro wrestling. It's sports entertainment. And it was bad. And if he would return to WWE anytime before Triple H taking over main roster creative, I think it would have been a huge disappointment. I think it would have been a huge fail, and I don't think it would have happened to begin with. He had so much heat with Vince, and Vince had so much heat with him, that it was not Triple H who kicked out CM Punk in early 2023 when he attended went backstage, really, a Monday Night Raw in Chicago. It was Vince who called and said, get that man out of there. If you look at his AEW run, and he's talked about this before, he's in the business of drawing money. Tony Khan is under the impression that if you can book the greatest matches with the greatest in-ring talent, regardless of their promos or their character work, that you will draw money. There is a certain degree to that has worked. And this comes from a guy who's bought a ticket, 2 tickets actually, to Dynamite when they came to Tulsa earlier this year. If you look at CM Punk and what he was able to do in AEW, it's business in which they have not been able to draw since. He was their biggest drawing card. They have not been able to sustain that. They have not been able to maintain it. They've not been able to duplicate it. Business was never hotter when CM Punk was on top. It was a mistake when he got into the all-out brawl out with the Elite of A, even letting it get there. B, when he returned, instead of having him on your flagship show, despite the fact that the man said, "Fire me," and you put him on Collision, a Saturday night show that was new, that everyone and their mother knew was going to be the B show. It's a show that no one watches in regards to outside of the hardest of hardcore AEW fans, and the ratings reflect that. I'm just being honest. Why? I've noticed this about myself. I am more used to going out of my way to see highlights of Rampage than I am Collision. Why is that? Because by Friday night, I'm done with wrestling. I don't want to see another clip of wrestling. I've watched 3 hours of Monday Night Raw. I've watched 2 hours of NXT. I've watched 2 hours of Dynamite. I've watched 2 hours of SmackDown. I watched an hour of Rampage. I don't want to watch anymore. He's also talked about how he is in the business of drawing money, and they are in a business of drawing great matches and star ratings. He belongs in WWE only under Triple H's leadership because the company is so much different than it was under Vince. It's so much better. It's so much laid back. There's so much more freedom. Every single positive thing that I can say is because of Triple H and under his leadership and what he's been able to do with that company. It's remarkable. Business have never been hotter. They never made more money. Everyone loves the WWE product, and that has taken away from the influence and the impact of AEW because they've not been able to sustain that, right? People went to AEW for the most part because they were not getting the product in which they wanted from WWE. Now that WWE is giving them the product that they want, they simply aren't going back to AEW. That's just my take.